Thanks, Vicky. Morning. Thanks, Vicky. Morning, everyone. Great to see you and great to be here at Chelmsford Boxing Club. And I used to be actually involved in a Boys and Girls Club in the past, and I know what an incredible job you guys do to provide services for young people. So thank you for doing that. It makes a huge, huge difference, as I've seen myself. Now, at the beginning of the year, I set out some priorities, and I always said that your priorities and my priorities are the government's priorities, and they're pretty simple and they're behind me. It's to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting lists, and to stop the boats. That's what we're busy getting on doing, and I'm really confident that over the course of this year, you are going to see that we are delivering for you and for everyone else on those 5 priorities. But alongside that, I also want to make sure that we have a country where all of us, our families, our kids, are growing up in strong communities. Communities that feel safe, communities that are thriving, communities that we all feel proud to call home. Strong communities are built on values. And in fact, the most important rule that we teach our kids is the golden rule, right? It's about respect. It's about treating others in the way that you would like to be treated back. And unfortunately, as Vicky was just talking about, right, there is a small minority of people who break that golden rule and cause disruption and disorder in their communities. And you know what I'm talking about. You've all seen it. About gangs gathering, being disruptive, being drunk, being disorderly, people littering, graffitiing, fly tipping. And it's not okay, right? It's not okay for our children to experience it, for us as families to not be able to walk around freely in our communities, avoid parks or high streets at particular times of the day. You know, that's not the type of communities that you want. It's not the type of country that we are. And that's why it's important that we do something about it. Now, of course, we're putting 20,000 more police officers on the street, and we're making great progress on that, record numbers here in Essex. But that's great. But we really want to focus specifically on antisocial behaviour, and that's what today's about. And you've got a copy of our new action plan on your chairs. But I'll just highlight what's in there for you. There are kind of 3 buckets of it. The first is that we need to make sure that we give antisocial behaviour the urgency that this subject deserves. So what we're going to do is use far more hotspot policing, where we make sure that our police target the areas that are of most concern. It's been proven to work in lots of different places. And we're going to have more use of what's called immediate justice, so that those people who are behaving irresponsibly and poorly will have to repair the damage they're causing, clear up the mess that they've made within days of that having been caught, so that justice can be seen to be done. That's what immediate justice is about. So that's about treating ASB with the urgency it demands. The next thing is to have a zero-tolerance approach to all forms of antisocial behaviour, and especially I'm talking about drugs. So what we're going to do is ban nitrous oxide, because I think all of us for far too long have had to walk through places with the canisters and all the rest of it, and that's not acceptable. So we're going to ban nitrous oxide, and we're also going to expand the power of the police to do drug testing on arrest for far more crimes and far more drugs, and tackle the scourge of drugs. And then the third thing in the plan is to give the police and local authorities the tools and the powers they need to combat antisocial behaviour. So we're significantly increasing, in some cases doubling, the fines that local authorities, councils can charge for things like fly tipping, littering, graffiti. We're making it easier to evict antisocial tenants. And we're investing more money in the provision of youth services like this, 1 million extra hours for youth clubs to provide other things for young people to do, and investing in communities to build more parks and green spaces, which are shown to have a real impact on people's well-being. So that is the plan. There's lots more in there, but that's a plan in a nutshell. We've got immediate justice, hotspot policing, a ban on nitrous oxide, more drug testing, and more investment in youth services, more investment in green spaces, and more powers for local councils. Because this is really important. I know it's important to you and your families. It's important to me and the government. And this plan is how we are going to stamp out antisocial behaviour. It's how we're going to level up across our country. And most importantly, it's how we're going to build strong and thriving communities that we are proud to call home. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're here to talk about today. Thank you very much for your time. Right, I'm going to throw it open. Feel free to ask me anything you want. That's what I'm here for. We should talk about ASB a bit because that's important and topical. But anything else on your mind as well, I'm here for anything and everything. So I'll throw it open. And who wants to go first? Yes, sir.
Thank you. Prime Minister, your expert advisors on drugs say that
So
criminalising...
are you from the media?
I am, yes.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to come to your questions at the end, if that's all right.
Well,
Sorry, I hadn't realised.
why don't we do that now?
So I want to try and get some questions from the audience. We've got plenty of time for media questions at the end. Right, perfect. Right, so who do we have? We have, yes, sir, here.
Prime Minister, how do you go about reporting the antisocial behaviour and shoplifting? And if it's the non-emergency phone number, have you ever tried that non-emergency phone number? It's the most frustrating thing in the world.
Yeah, no, that is a very good point. And, you know, one thing, when we were putting this plan together, you know, what you just said, we heard a lot from people. And, you know, actually, if you look at it, oddly enough, police recorded incidents of antisocial behaviour are down 35% in the last year or so, or the last couple of years. So you think, gosh, we're making really good progress. And then actually, when you talk to people, what's clear is tons of it is not going reported because too many people feel exactly the way that you do. They're like, it's too difficult, what's the point? And no one would do anything about it, right? And that's what we're trying to fix. So one thing you'll see in there is what we're going to roll out is a new digital tool that it's going to make it far easier for people to report antisocial behaviour and actually to be able to do it digitally and online and then get an update on what's happening about it. Now, we're not going to be able to do that overnight, so we're going to have to build that over the course of this year and roll it out, but it's going to address the problem that you raised, right? Because it should be easy. When you see something happening, it should be easy for you to say, this is what I've seen, this is what's going on, and then have the local authority and the police report back on what they've done about it so that you feel that your concerns are being listened to.
The only thing is there, it takes seconds for the antisocial to take place or the shoplifting. Time you report it online, it goes to wherever it's happened, they've gone. So what do you do then? We've had loads of problems at the local market here. Report it to the police. You can set your watch on it every Saturday afternoon. Happened this Saturday twice. They set the fire alarms off. It ruins all our businesses, like, because they've got to go and investigate the fire alarm. They reset the fire alarm. Then, half hour later, they've done it again, but this time they've pressed 2 fire alarms. And there we are trying to earn a living, right, in these rough times, and all the customers are now gone. And then we can't do nothing, right? It's so frustrating, right? I'll just at the end of our tether, to be honest.
No, look, and that's what I talked right at the beginning about having high streets and town centres that are thriving, right? You're trying to work hard and run a business, people want to come and do their shopping, and if it's not safe, if it doesn't feel safe, none of that's going to happen. And you know, one of the things I was talking to the police about this morning in your local area is this concept of hotspot policing. And that's what we're going to roll out far more of, including here in Essex. I see your Police and Crime Commissioner nodding away. And hotspot policing is about exactly that. It's about us knowing what you just said. Because in every area, there's things like that are happening that we know about, right? And when it comes to antisocial behaviour, when it comes to things like shoplifting, in general, there are patterns to it, and there are pockets where it is more prevalent. And the use of hotspot policing has been shown to work across the UK, but also abroad as well. And we're going to be doing more of that. So we're investing more in hotspot policing that will hopefully address things like that. The areas where we know it's happening, the times that we know it's happening, the people that we know are typically committing it, and target our resources on those people to make a difference. Because I want you to be able to go and do what you want to do, which is go and work hard, make a living, and serve your customers. And it's too hard if your life is being disrupted by criminals. It's not acceptable. Believe you me, we want to clamp down on it. And part of this plan, the hotspot policing, is going to help do that. And then the digital tool for people to report it quickly and get it dealt with as well. All right? Good. All right. Right, who have we got? Yes, ma'am.
Prime Minister, we work with vulnerable youth across Essex. Many of them are dropping out of school because they're not coping, either through learning difficulties, family problems. And I think that those are the young people we often see falling into the edge of crime or into criminal behaviour. So my concern is, I welcome what you're doing, of course, because I think it's important for community safety. However, I do think we need to look holistically at the problem as well and try and get underneath what is it that drives young people into antisocial behaviour. And I think community policing is huge. You know, we've seen police officers who know the family, know the children, know the problems, and get into that. And I think if we try and just go for the top, I think we're going to miss getting to that really deepened causation of what's driving this behaviour. So definitely learning disabilities, dropping out of school, not having enough to do, family breakdown, etc., seems to me to be one of the biggest causes. So is there a way to make sure that schools are going to have some extra community policing support so they're able to actually get to the bottom of where people are struggling?
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good point. And, you know, we focus a lot on the police aspect of this, and obviously the police are there to deal with the enforcement and the criminal behaviour, and it's important that they do, because that's their job and they need to make sure that they do that. But equally, it's important that we do all the other things that we need to do to try and stop the crime happening in the first place. And you identified a couple of things there that we are making progress on that I just want to make sure you guys all know. So you talked about mental health in schools, for example. It's one of the, you know, actually one of the very sad legacies of COVID. And you talk to anyone who's involved in schools, the increase in young people's mental health that we've seen over the last couple of years. I can see lots of you nodding, right? So actually we're in the process of rolling out for all schools funding for them to have access to a mental health community lead in the school working with their young people, right? So that is, we're work in progress, but we're making good progress on that. That will really help. You also talked about youth provision. And you know, one of the things really important in the plan is extra funding for 1 million more hours of youth provision. You know, like clubs like this do a fantastic job. And when I was working in a Boys and Girls Club, I saw firsthand just the incredible, incredible work they do to provide places for young people to go, to have great role models, to, you know, to have positive experiences. So I completely agree with you, that's really important. We're actually also spending, over the course of this Parliament, £300 million building brand new or upgraded youth facilities across the country. So rest assured that there's money there, that's happening, but 1 million more hours of youth provision. And the last thing you touched on was family breakdown. Really important. And we have, you know, we have a program called the Supporting Families program, which is run by councils. And it used to be called the Troubled Families program, for those of you that can remember it. And it's not a great name, so we've renamed it. That works. But it does fantastic work. Because police, there they are, they're wonderful, right? That's not the police's primary job, right? They can't fight crime and do enforcement and also be doing all of that. Now, yes, they know families and they know schools, but fundamentally, we need a different approach. So what the Supporting Families program does is it has these amazing caseworkers, and they go and sit with a family and look at the entire family's challenges and work with them to work through them. Because families are complicated, right? All of our families, they're all complicated, all got different issues going on, and it's not that straightforward. But these caseworkers come in, they talk to the kids, they talk to the parents, figure out what all the different elements of the support that the family needs, that normally all exist, right, in the council and in the community, and pull it all together to help that family. And that program is doing fantastic work. And I used to be, when my first ministerial job was, I was in charge of all our councils, and that program sat under my responsibility. So I got this really amazing opportunity to go and see the work that these people were doing. And then because of that, you know, when I got to be Chancellor, I managed to give them more money to roll it out because I knew what a great job it was doing. But it's doing a fantastic job. And it is helping tackle that family breakdown at a much earlier stage, help keep kids in school, help keep families together, help people get into work. And that's how we'll stop, you know, people ending up in a life of crime later on. But your point about conveyor belt is really important, right? And that's why this antisocial behaviour is important. What we don't want is for young people to get in bad habits at such an early stage in their life, because we don't want people to get on a path where they end up doing really bad things, right? Which is why clamping down on antisocial behaviour is really important. You know, we don't want, you know, that's why, you know, clamping down on nitrous oxide is really important. We don't want to things which are just going to lead to even worse crimes down the line. But your point, you know, really well made. Right, should we come over here? Who have we got? Yes, sir.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Steve Shaw, Chairman of Chelmsford City Football Club. I think there's a lot of desire in the community to do more and to actually provide that engagement for young people. Football, which I'm involved in, is obviously a great way of engaging young people and getting to do things. I do think, though, that one of the challenges we have is a lack of facilities. Ourselves, we'd love to do more with our youth, but we don't necessarily have the facilities to do that. You've talked a little bit about funding, but what else is there in terms of planning and things like that that are going to help organisations who have the desire, happy to spend the money to do it, because I think it's a good thing to do in our communities, but, we just need some support to enable us to provide that to the young people and give them that time to get out and give them something to do and enrich their lives.
So you're saying the issue is a planning issue, is it?
I think it's a money and a planning issue, and making sure that we can provide to, these guys do a great job here with the football. I'm sure they'd like to do more, but often people are struggling to find the facilities to enable people to actually put on that way to engage the young people.
Well, look, that's what I was saying to Dave's question earlier. That's why we're investing over this Parliament £300 million to upgrade and expand and build new youth facilities across the country. So it could be everything from places like this to regular youth centres to Scouts huts, all the rest of it. So that actually is going to be rolled out and there'll be funding available. But also on football in particular, we've partnered with the Premier League and the FA, and I haven't got the numbers on the top of my head. But again, we're rolling out brand new 3G football pitches across the country. Because you're right, actually, is just giving young people the opportunity to go out and have healthy, positive experiences is really important. It's great for our well-being. And so one thing we are doing, there'll be many more football pitches across the country as a result of that partnership between all of us over this Parliament. And hopefully, I don't know where the nearest one will be to here, but we'll check and get back to you. I'm sure Vicky will come and nod me afterwards. But thank you for doing what you're doing. That's great. How is the football team getting on? Good season?
Doing okay this season.
Doing okay?
Fourth.
Really? Good. Doing a lot better than Southampton, my team, which is good. Right, yes. I had a gentleman. Yeah, there. Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll do both. And there's someone at the back as well.
Hello. I chair the Chelmsford and Malden Neighbourhood Watch Group, and we're a diverse area. We've got little pockets of inner city areas, and we've got very wide rural areas. Can I just ask about mini hotspots? I think you're right about hotspots. We have an excellent relationship with the community policing team. They're very responsive when they can. The capacity, though, is a problem. Is there not a concern that you'll focus on the big hotspots at the expense of the little hotspots, and little hotspots become big hotspots? How do we get over that particular challenge?
Well, I think the quick answer is, your local team, who I spent some time with this morning, are the experts, right? Because they know how best to direct their time. And one thing I've been really struck by, I think here you do a great job, which we probably need to learn from to spread out everywhere, Roger, is the use of data, actually. And it's just getting the collection of data and making sure that we then target our resources effectively is something that is an important part of making it work and making sure the targeting works. But ultimately, your local teams are the best people who are, to figure out exactly where they should spend their time. And I think we know hotspot policing as a concept works. There's great evidence from the US and elsewhere in the UK, and we're going to build on that in the plan with more funding to roll that out. But your point is right, we've got to target it effectively, but rest assured that with the data collection we're doing, we should be able to do that. All right, yes, it was Sir at the back, and then we'll come to you as well.
I probably don't need this. I've got quite a loud voice. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right. My name's Jeff Jones. I'm a resident of Chelmsford. I come from Great Baddow, which is quite a nice little area, but we have got a few problems there. And I'd like to address the problem I've got about the uprise in Airbnbs, which also produce antisocial behaviour. Now, where I live, we've had a property redeveloped as an Airbnb. It's classed as what they call C3 usage, which incorporates Airbnbs and it incorporates short-term holiday lets. These places are let by the owners to groups of people with no control whatsoever. They can come in and they can use the facilities that are there. In this particular case, they've got 10 people, hot tubs, karaoke rooms, and antisocial behaviour, and especially noise nuisance, can go on throughout the night. And there's no restriction. And I think there really should be addressing the problems these are causing, with maybe some regulations coming in. My experience, I think everybody's had experience with antisocial behaviour. I have as well. But you wouldn't expect it living where I am, in an area like that, where you've got a property where this is going on all the time. I'm not walking the back streets of Chelmsford and the alleyways of Chelmsford looking at this, but it goes on. We've got a very strong neighbourhood association that works closely with the police, and they do an awful lot of work, and I know the police do an awful lot of work, but we still have problems, and the one I particularly got is it comes from just a property, you know. So I think there needs to be something more done about the rise in B&Bs, because I think they're becoming a problem, not just in Chelmsford but nationwide.
No, that's a really good point, sir. And I'm sorry you're having to deal with that, right? I mean, it's enormously frustrating, particularly if you've got young kids and you're trying to sleep and people are being disruptive nearby. So let me take that away. I think I've got a feeling we are looking at that from memory, but I will go away and talk about it with my colleagues and figure out that we do have something that we can do to make that situation easier. Well, on a related topic, not exactly the same, but similar, just to give you confidence that we are thinking about this in the plan, is better powers and faster ways to evict antisocial tenants. And I think that process has taken far too long often for local authorities and private landlords. So what we've got as part of the plan is, I think, a halving of the time it will take to evict antisocial tenants who are doing exactly the same thing, not in an Airbnb capacity, just as a general, day-to-day experience, which is not acceptable, right? And it goes back to what I said at the beginning, right? It's about treating people with respect. Right, it's about that golden rule, right? And it's about treating your neighbours, the people who live near you, with respect and recognising that your behaviour has an impact on them, and just have common courtesy and decency. Yes, you should not be, having incredibly noisy parties at 3 a.m. or people doing all sorts of things, right? Like, that's not acceptable. And that's why we, as I said, strengthen the powers for eviction of antisocial behaviour. But I'll take away the specific point on regulation, licensing and things like that of Airbnb. I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Hi. I've lived in Chelmsford my whole life, so I know the streets quite well. I think the Conservatives have dropped the ball a little bit, to be honest. I know it's all good talking about this laughing gas, but that is the least of your problems. I've got an allotment, and it's right next to a scout hut as well. You have drug deals going on outside it. There's a school nearby. When I go for my walks, there's people that are doing a lot harder drugs. I'm talking injecting, so I can only assume it's heroin. I've reported this, nothing happens. You don't, like the gentleman said earlier, you don't know whether it goes into the system or not. I think I've skimmed through this morning, and I personally think some of these things are important, but it's the punishments. If someone's on drugs and they're at the rock bottom, a fine ain't going to help them. You can have, you can go and try and tell them to go to community service. Do you think that's actually going to work? They probably won't turn up. And I'm being respectful to that. But you've got to support them to get them out of it. But also, the other end is you've got to go up to the top of the snake and cut the head off. So all these drugs coming in, you've got to get rid of first, and then you can solve out all those little bits in between, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So what you're going to do.
Yeah. Look, you're right. Right? I mean, drugs are appalling, right? Like, drugs are a scourge on our communities, on our young people, and there's a direct link between drugs and all sorts of other crime, including violence. And that's why, we've been particularly tough. And you talk about, nitrous oxide, laughing gas, right? Yes, it's not heroin, but it's the third most taken drug amongst young people in the country, right, behind cocaine and cannabis, and causes all sorts of trouble. And it's important that we don't have kids start doing something, which then leads on to more serious things, even more serious things down the line. So that's why it's important that we do ban it, and I think that will help stop some of the things we're talking about. But more broadly, you're right about drugs, right? So we've invested in a couple of things. One is really tackling county lines. And that was a big thing, working with the police over the last couple of years. We've put more money into tackling those drug gangs that do that. And I think in the last few years, someone will correct me if I'm wrong, we've actually disrupted about 3,500 county lines. And it's making good progress, right? But of course, we need to do more. I agree with you, right? Community sentences for that are not appropriate. And that's why what we're doing in here is far stronger than that. Those are criminal offences. that carry criminal convictions and sentences for that when people break those rules, right? And actually nitrous oxide it's already illegal to sell nitrous oxide for psychoactive reasons, but it hasn't obviously worked because we all walk around and see it everywhere and see far worse things. So look, I agree that we should have tough sentences. We do. We should be cracking down on the gangs and going up to the top of it. We are doing that, and we will keep doing more of it, because you're right, we don't want them to damage our communities. But we are also, and I'll end on this note, because you mentioned it and you were right to mention it, right? Drugs do completely ruin people's lives. Right? That's why it's right that we have zero tolerance for them. They ruin people's lives, families' lives, communities' lives. And that's why we're also investing in treatment and rehabilitation. We had this very eminent person called Dame Carol Black, do a review a couple of years ago. She came out, independent report for government of all the things that she thought we should be doing more of when it came to treatment and rehabilitation. And we have funded that with several £100 million. And that's going on all the things that you would expect us to be doing to make sure that those people, yes, we should be catching the gangsters and the people who are supplying these things. But for the people whose lives are being ruined, we need to move them on and make sure that they get the help, support and treatment they need as well. So we're also doing that. So we should have zero tolerance approach to drugs and make sure we stamp out criminality. We should also make sure that we are helping the people who need our support, and we're doing that too. But I completely agree with you. It is appalling. Drugs are appalling, and no government should have any kind of permissive attitude towards them or tolerance for them when they are doing so much damage, and rest assured that that's what we're doing as well. All right. Yes, Miss.
Hello, I'm Rachel from Essex Council Voluntary Youth Services. We've just finished a listening project with 1,500 children and young people in Essex, Southend and Thurrock, for our violence and vulnerability unit, around how safe they feel in their communities. And one of the things that they've told us is that they want more safe spaces, they want more trusted adults. They don't want to hang around in dark parks, but actually they're scared of dark parks. So we need to provide safer spaces for them. You talked about your investment in youth work and youth services and community groups, but how are you going to make sure that that money goes to the community groups and the youth work groups on the ground?
Yeah, Rachel, thank you for that, and thank you for the work you're doing, because it's really important. So, look, a couple of things we're doing, because you talk about safe spaces, interesting, people feeling safe. We actually, funnily enough, have a fund called the Safer Streets Fund, and we set that up in the wake of what happened with Sarah Everard, actually. And I have two young girls, and unfortunately it's been the case for too long that particularly our women and girls don't feel safe enough, and that's not acceptable. And one of the things that the Safer Streets Fund does is it funds very practical local interventions that communities bid for. Vicky's... £1 million here. Oh, right, there we go. And what the kind, I don't know what it's doing here in particular, but the kinds of things that fund does is things like street lighting, because you talked about dark spaces, right? It's really important that you mentioned it, because one of the things you hear about repeatedly, if stuff is better lit, right, people feel safer, and actually it means that criminals or people who are just causing trouble move away. So what that fund, it does things like more street lighting, more CCTV, to exactly address the thing that you're talking about. And I think, as Vicky's nodding away, I'm glad that you've got some of it here. But your point is really well made. Those kind of practical interventions make a difference, and they've got to be driven bottom up, because I don't know, sitting in Downing Street, which bit of your community is the one that needs the extra street lighting or a bit of green space, quite frankly. And that's actually why today's money is also funding green spaces, because green, pleasant spaces inside urban areas are shown to be great for providing a bit of respite for people and increasing people's well-being as well. So we're doing some more funding of that as well. But thank you for doing what you're doing, and I'm glad it's working out here. Right, I'm getting waved out, which means I've got to, unfortunately, move on to some media questions as well. So let me just figure out who we've got. We've got the BBC here. Right.
Thank you very much indeed, and nice to be back. Your expert advisors on drugs say that criminalising the use of nitrous oxide will have, in their words, significant unintended consequences. It risks harming children and empowering criminals. Have you had enough of experts?
Right, so on nitrous oxide, I saw you guys nodding away when I was talking about it, right? I think, quite frankly, I and almost everyone else is just sick of having to deal with nitrous oxide canisters when they're walking through their communities, right? And it's about being in your community, being in your park, being on your high street, your town centre, and not having to see these things strewn around. Not seeing. I'm just trying to answer. No, if you just let me answer the question, that'd be great, right? And it's not just about the littering, but it's about the damage that are being done by the people who are using it, right? It's about people throwing them out of their cars. It's about people driving on it. It's about, we talked, your very powerful question earlier about what drugs do more generally. And I think it's important that we have a zero tolerance approach to drugs. And that's why I think it's important that we ban nitrous oxide for all the damage that it does. And it's something that I hear repeatedly when I'm out and about around the country from people who say, look, this thing is a scourge. It's as we were talking about, it's the third most taken drug by young people today, right? After cocaine and cannabis. That's not good, right? It's actually already been banned in places like the Netherlands, right, and California, not obvious places that you would think of for doing this, but they've actually banned it, and it is already illegal in this country to sell nitrous oxide for psychoactive uses, right? It's already illegal, but that ban is not working because that's what's happening. And there is a clear link between it and all these other things. So for all those reasons, and indeed your very powerful question, sir, earlier, I think it's right that we are tough on drugs. And I think this is something that lots of people have spoken to me in the government about, and I think it's important that we take action to deal with it, and that's what I'm really pleased that we're doing today. Next question from Heart Radio.
Henry Riley from Global Radio. Prime Minister, in light of the report from the Children's Commissioner today, should children as young as 8 be strip searched? And on the action plan that you've got today, I note that you say the government's on track for the 20,000 police officers by the end of the month. Are you hoping there are some Catherine Caywoods among those ranks?
So, look, on the report over the weekend, it's obviously concerning. We take the safeguarding and welfare of children really seriously. The police do, everyone does, of course they do. So, what I'd say on that is the IOPC, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, is already actually looking at some of the higher profile cases anyway, so that work is ongoing. And the Home Office and the Home Secretary are going to very carefully consider the findings of the Children's Commissioner's report before deciding on the right course of action. So I can't say more about it right now. Obviously, we've just got the report. The Home Office is going to go through it in detail, and the Independent, as I say, Office of Police Conduct are looking at some of the more high-profile cases as they should be, because we all take the welfare and safeguarding of children seriously, and it's right that we address these things properly. So that's what's happening. And on the police officers, look, this is one of our signature commitments. So we're going to put 20,000 more police officers on the street. We're going to be there at the end of the month. I think there are record numbers of police officers right now in Essex, which is fantastic, doing a great job. And look, yes, there've been some. We all read the Casey report or heard reports of it the other week. It's appalling, right? Quite really appalling to read some of the examples of that abuse of power that have been happening, and it's right that we stamp that out, make all the changes that are required, whether that's the Mayor, the new Metropolitan Police Commissioner, everyone working together to have change. But there are also countless examples of police officers doing a fantastic job in their communities to keep us safe, working very hard to do so. I had the pleasure of meeting some of yours this morning, and we should also be grateful to them and continue supporting them to keep doing the great job that they're doing for us too. Next, we got Sky News.
So just very quickly, on the question of police, this often comes up is people say, can we get more police on the streets? That comes up all the time, okay? I think we've spoken to the police, and the assumption of the police is that it's better to get the police into cars because they can react quickly to incidents. So they attend incidents and they come back. What we should be doing is to get more police, if they're coming back from an incident, drive round these problem areas just so they've got a presence on the street. Could we not get a little bit more presence on the street through this way? I can understand they might have limitations with getting bobbies on the beat, walking round, but surely we can get a little bit more presence on the street.
So look, I think having more police officers is a good thing. That's why we've got 20,000 more of them. Making them as effective and as visible as possible is also important, right? So, that I would leave those kind of operational decisions to to the teams themselves and to Roger, your Police and Crime Commissioner. But I don't, you know, I broadly agree with you. Like, we want our police officers to be visible and to be effective. You know, part of that is, you know, it's probably not me to micromanage how much they're in a car versus how much they're walking on the street. But what I can do is ensure that we're giving them the powers they need to do their job effectively, whether it's stop and search and other things, which we're doing. You know, whether it's removing as much of the bureaucracy and paperwork from their job as we can, so they can focus on, you know, actually doing the job that you want them to do, which we're doing that as well. And, you know, to the lady's question earlier on about making sure that all the other bits of local councils, state, government, the health service, children's services are doing their jobs, so the police are not having to pick up and try and do all those other things again, so they can focus on what they want to do and what you want them to do. So that's something we're working on as well, so we can just make sure that our police are as effective as possible and doing the things that we want them to do. Right, Sky News. I'm getting hurried up to grapple through.
Prime Minister, you say in this action plan that you're going further than the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs recommended. Well, they recommended that you tackle the illegal supply of nitrous oxide. And a Sky News investigation you might have seen showed that some shops are selling it without verifying ages and even giving balloons with the canisters. What are you doing about the illegal supply? Because it's not just shops, of course, it's also websites. And if nitrous oxide is banned, are these shops and websites still going to be able to continue selling these canisters?
Yeah, no, I mean, you make a good point. Actually, it goes back to the question we were talking about earlier, right? And that's technically at the moment, it should already, none of that should be happening. There's already a ban on selling it for psychoactive substance, for usage. That's clearly not working. And that's why it's right that we've gone further today. And what we're going to do over the course of the spring and the summer is consult on the best way to do this to make sure that it is effective. Tackling supply is important. That's why we've gone out after county line gangs and disrupted 3,500 of them. It's why we've toughened up sentencing for drug supply. You know, it's why the police have got those things called Project Adder, for example, which is a national program to target drug gangs in particular. So all of those things help deal with supply. You know, we need to get the consultation right on the implementation, because obviously there are a couple of industries where it's used, and we need to make sure that we, you know, with catering, healthcare being the obvious examples, so we need to have exceptions for those. So we need to make sure that those people still have access to it, but that needs to be controlled and limited to them, and that we can end its supply to young people who are then using it in a way that none of us want them to be doing. And that's what we'll spend the spring and the summer getting exactly right. Next, Essex Live.
Morning, Prime Minister.
Hi.
The Chief Constable here in Essex has raised concern about the salaries of officers here, saying that more people are having to turn to second jobs, and there are officers who are having to use a food bank as well here. Do you agree with his call for more pay for those officers?
So I hadn't seen the specific report, but what I do know is what we've done more broadly is accept the recommendations of the independent body on pay for police officers. So the government has accepted those and is implementing those. You know, I haven't got the numbers at the top of my head, but there's, I think from about £1,500 type increase. Sorry? 900, more than I thought, so £1,900 increase, I think, as a minimum for police officers, and I'm glad we're able to put that in place. I think the broader point I'd make, though, not just for police officers, but for all of you and for everyone else, public sector, private sector, right? I know things are difficult, right? I know that, you know, every time you get a bill, it's gone up more than you would imagine, more than it's ever gone up, and that is having an impact on your day-to-day living standards, right? And it's not great. I know that that is the number one challenge, and that's why the top of that list behind me, halve inflation. The thing that's making people feel poorer, the thing that's eating into people's living standards, the thing that's making people be stressed about their pay settlements is inflation. It's inflation that is driving up the cost of living. It's putting up the prices of, you know, your energy, your food, and everything else. It's inflation that we need to get down, and that's why my number one priority is to halve inflation. And we've got a plan. Trust me, the plan will work. We've got to stick with it. It's not easy. It's never easy to root inflation out of a system, but it is not some abstract economic thing. It is inflation that is the thing that is causing all these troubles, right? It's why you're asking me about pay. It's why you're all struggling with energy bills. It's inflation that is doing that, which is why it's really important we stick to our economic plan, we get inflation down, and everything will feel better when we do that. I promise you, right? And, you know, if there's nothing else, I think you can trust that I know how to manage an economy, and you've seen me do it, right? right? Once we sort this out and we get inflation down, life is going to feel a lot better. And the plan that we've got is the right one. And if we stick to it, I think you're going to see that in your bank accounts. You're going to feel a lot better about things by the end of the year. All right, next we've got the Sun.
Prime Minister, we have seen anti-social behaviour crackdowns under every Prime Minister since Blair. Why should we believe you that you're actually going to get this done? And if I may, on small boats, are you concerned this morning that reports that your Home Secretary is being seen as a sock puppet under the influence of Tory MPs who see that your small boats plan doesn't quite go far enough?
Look, so on... cheeky with your two questions, Ryan, but I'll do them quickly. But look, on antisocial behaviour and on me, I've had this job for a few months, right? You guys saw me in the pandemic. You saw what I did. I said I would do these things. I delivered them in the pandemic. As your Prime Minister, I'm very clear about what I'm going to achieve for you. You've seen over the last few weeks, we're getting things done. Okay, we are getting things done, right? Yes, the situation is not easy. Of course it's not easy. There are lots of challenges I'm grappling with, right? But I'm working my socks off for all of you and everyone else in this country. And, I only promise what I can deliver, and I'll deliver what I promise. It's as simple as that. And that's what you'll see about me. There are 5 things behind me. They're very simple. At the end of the year, you'll be able to have me back, or country will have me back and say, well, how are you doing on these things? And you'll be able to say, is he doing a good job or is he not? And I'm confident that I can deliver on the things I tell you that I'm going to do for you and everyone else. So, trust me on this, as I say, trust me on inflation, that we will make a difference. And look, we are doing some significant things today, right? We are we are banning nitrous oxide. We're increasing hotspot policing. These are very specific things. We're expanding drug tests. We're putting more money into youth provision. These are specific, practical steps that will make a difference on this, right? And that's that. Oh, look, on tackling boats, this is a massive issue, right? Last year we had 45,000 people come to our country illegally, and it's putting an enormous pressure on the system. That number has gone up 4 or 5 times in just a couple of years. All of you have seen the struggle we're having with hotels and everything else, the cost that all of you are having to pay, £5.5 million a day in hotel costs. So it's absolutely right that we get to grips with this problem, and we do it in a compassionate, fair and moral way. And I passionately believe that what we are doing, the way we're going to tackle this problem, is the compassionate way to do it. Because ultimately, all of us, right, this whole country is a generous country. We want to help the most vulnerable people in the world. Of course we do. Right? At the moment, we're not able to even do that because of what's happening to our system, which is why we've got to get a grip on it. And I'll say that the Home Secretary has done a superb job. The Home Secretary and I have worked incredibly closely for the last few months since we've had this job to get the legislation exactly right. It's not easy, right? It is not easy. We need something that is going to be robust, that's going to be effective, and that's what we've got. We've got a new law to stop the boats that's gone further than any other government has ever done, right? So it is a tough piece of legislation, the likes of which we've never seen. But it's important that it's effective, which it will be, but it's also important that we abide by our international obligations, right? This is a country and a government that does follow the law. Of course that's important. We are confident, right? The Home Secretary is confident, I'm confident we've designed a piece of legislation that will tackle this problem and do so whilst being in compliance with laws that we are a party to. I think that's what all of you want, right? You take our reputation as a country seriously. We have found a way to do it. We worked very hard on it. The Home Secretary sat there with me and helped do it over the next few months, and together she and I are going to deliver it. Right, and lastly and quickly, the Telegraph.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Just firstly, on tax briefly, since your tax return was issued, there have been murmurings from Labour that capital gains tax should be brought in line with income tax. Do you think there is any case for that to be examined? And then just briefly, secondly, on Scotland, will you open discussions with the new SNP leader on an independence referendum?
So look, on my tax returns, it was something that I promised I would do in the interest of transparency. I've done it. And look, there'll be a lot of focus on this, that and the other. But I think, look, most of you, I would imagine, as everyone else says to me, is not particularly bothered by it. What they are bothered about what I'm doing for you and everyone else to help with the cost of living. And if there's one thing that I always say when I'm doing these things, there's one policy you can remember, and I never talk about tax policy because that's Chancellor's job, and when I was Chancellor I never loved it when the Prime Minister started commenting on tax policy, but we've just had a budget, so you know what we think about everything. But there's one policy to take away is this, right? We made a difficult decision, I made a decision as Chancellor to tax the wartime windfall profits of energy companies exceptionally, and to use that money to help support all of you and everyone else with your energy bills. That support is paying about half of a typical family's energy bill, half, and it's worth about £1,500, right? So that is what we are doing. That is what this government's values are. That's what our priorities are. And you know, I said to you when first day I got this job, I promised I'd help with the cost of living, and that's what we're doing, and that's what people should focus on. And you know, what was your other? Oh, right. Look, that, you know, the SP will do their thing. We'll find out today. Look, I'm very clear that I passionately believe in our union, right? I passionately believe in our union. I think hopefully, you know, I was just in Wales the other day announcing some free ports, which are these new post-Brexit economic zones that we can create that are going to create jobs and drive opportunity and investment. I did the same in Scotland. I was happy to work with the Scottish government to deliver 2 free ports in Scotland. We worked with the Welsh government to deliver 2 free ports there. I think all of you have seen the attention and care I've given to resolving the situation in Northern Ireland with the Windsor framework. I care about our union. I think it's very precious. And I always say, look, when my grandparents emigrated, you know, to this country, they didn't come to England, you know, they came to the United Kingdom. And that's because the UK represented a really powerful set of values. And ultimately, it's those values that bind us all together. It's not geography. And that idea that inspired my grandparents to emigrate here, the idea of what the United Kingdom stood for, what we were all about as a society, as a community, that is powerful, it's inspiring, and I will fight very hard to protect it every day that I'm in this job. Good. All right. Thanks very much, everyone. Nice to see you.